My name is Alice, and I have been married into a wealthy family for many years. At a grand ball, I will fall into the temptation of immorality. When I slowly entered the ballroom in that carefully selected black backless long dress, the whole world seemed to have stopped for me. The bright lights fell like stars, reflecting on my fair skin and giving off a soft glow, like jade under the moonlight, warm and dazzling. My blonde hair falls naturally over my shoulders like a waterfall, swaying gently with my every step. Every strand seems to carry a lively rhythm. Occasionally, a few delicate diamond hair accessories twinkle between the strands, adding a touch of luxury and mystery to my overall look. This black backless long dress is cut just right, perfectly outlining my delicate curves. The deep V-neck design at the back extends to the waist, revealing a large expanse of smooth skin, sexy yet elegant. The skirt is like a blooming black rose, fluttering lightly as I walk, as if whispering a silent romance. My blue eyes are like deep pools of water, looking lively. As I scanned the hall, I saw looks of surprise, admiration, and a hint of envy. I could feel that I had become the focus of the ball. This feeling of being noticed filled me with confidence. I slowly walked towards the bar in the center of the hall. The high heels made a crisp sound on the polished marble floor, as if playing a musical piece for my arrival. On the bar were various exquisite wine glasses and an array of drinks. I gently raised my hand to indicate that the bartender should pour me a glass of champagne. When the bubbly champagne was handed to me, I took a sip. The bubbles jumped on my tongue, bringing a touch of coolness and pleasure. Just then, someone in a group of men not far away let out a low exclamation. I smiled and turned my head, taking a glance at them with the corner of my eye. Their gaze revealed undisguised admiration for me. I raised my chin slightly, and a sense of pride welled up in my heart. However, I did not know that, beneath this seemingly beautiful appearance, danger was creeping up on me. In the shadows of the crowd, there was a pair of eyes that were staring at me intently. That gaze, like a hungry wolf staring at its prey, was full of greed and desire. And I, at this moment, was still immersed in the joy of being the center of attention, and I did not notice the impending crisis at all. I slowly paced around the hall with a glass of champagne in my hand. From time to time, I nodded and smiled at the guests around me. My smile was warm and charming, like the warm spring sun. Every movement I made was full of grace and confidence, as if I was born to be on the stage. Suddenly, a melodious piece of music started playing. It was a classic waltz. I felt my heart stir, and I couldn't help swaying my body to the rhythm of the music. The guests around me also started to pair up and enter the dance floor, beginning to dance. I stood at the edge of the dance floor, watching the figures twirling on the dance floor, and an urge to join them welled up in my heart. Just then, a tall man walked out of the crowd. He was wearing a well-tailored black suit and a white shirt with a delicate tie around the collar. His steady and confident gait attracted everyone's attention, like an elegant black panther. He walked straight towards me, and my heart beat faster involuntarily. When he reached me, he leaned slightly forward, gave a gentlemanly bow, and then said in a low, magnetic voice, "Beautiful lady, may I have the honor of inviting you to dance?" I looked up and met his gaze. There was a hint of expectation and tenderness in his eyes. I hesitated for a moment, then nodded with a smile, handed the champagne glass I was holding to the waiter next to me, and reached out to take his arm. We stepped onto the dance floor together and began to spin to the rhythm of the music. His hand rested lightly on my waist, just the right amount of pressure, making me feel both comfortable and secure. His dance steps were light and fluid, carrying me around the dance floor. Our bodies were pressed closely together, and I could feel the warmth of his breath on my skin. During the dance, we occasionally looked at each other, and there was an indescribable emotion in our eyes. I could feel my heartbeat getting faster and faster, and an inexplicable feeling was quietly growing in my heart. I tried hard to stay calm, but my heart was no longer calm. However, just as we were immersed in the joy of dancing, I suddenly felt an unusual gaze in the crowd. That gaze was like a sharp blade, piercing straight at me. I was startled, and I turned my head slightly to look for the source of that gaze. But when I scanned the area, I didn't notice anything unusual. I shook my head, pushed the uneasy feeling behind my back, and continued to immerse myself in the dance with the man in front of me. But I didn't know that this was just the beginning of a dangerous game, and more temptations and challenges were waiting for me to face. As the music ended, we slowly stopped dancing. He smiled, let go of my hand, gave another gentleman's bow, and said, "Thank you very much for your company, beautiful lady." I smiled and responded, "It's also my honor to dance with you." He turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. I looked at his departing back, and a sense of loss welled up in my heart. But soon, I was again drawn into the lively atmosphere around me. I returned to the bar and ordered another glass of champagne. Just as I lifted my glass to savor it again, I suddenly heard a light sound of footsteps behind me. I turned my head subconsciously, but saw an unfamiliar woman standing behind me. She was wearing a red evening dress, with her hair pulled up high to reveal her slender neck. There was a hint of provocation and disdain in her eyes. I frowned slightly, and a sense of displeasure welled up in my heart. "Are you Alice?" she asked, her tone tinged with mockery. I nodded and asked in return, "And you are?" She sneered and said, "It doesn't matter who I am. What's important is that you stay away from certain people." My heart tightened, and I immediately understood what she meant. But I wasn't intimidated by her words. Instead, I smiled and said, "I don't know what you're talking about, but I think everyone makes their own choices." She glared at me and then turned and walked away. I looked at her departing back, and a complex emotion welled up in my heart. I didn't know who she meant by certain people, or why she said such things to me. But I knew that this ball was no longer a simple social occasion, but was full of unknown dangers and temptations. I took a deep breath and gulped down the champagne in my hand. I told myself that no matter what happened, I had to remain calm and confident. I would continue to search for my own answers at this ball, while also being careful to avoid the hidden dangers. In the luxurious and lively ballroom, the colorful lights twinkled and interwove, the melodious music flowed like a babbling brook in the air, and the laughter and cheers of the people, as well as the crisp sound of glasses clinking, together created a magnificent social picture. I was in the midst of it all, smiling and exchanging pleasantries with the guests around me gracefully on the surface, but inside, I inexplicably felt a sense of loneliness and confusion. Just as I glanced around carelessly, I noticed him, Jack, in the gaps between the people. He was like a unique star, radiating a distinctive light at this dazzling ball. He was tall, and the black suit he wore looked like it had been tailored for him, perfectly outlining his strong physique. He had broad shoulders and a tight waist, and every line of his body revealed strength and elegance. The collar of his white shirt was slightly open, revealing a small patch of healthy tan skin, and his tie was impeccably tied but with a hint of unruliness. His hair is black and shiny, perfectly trimmed, slightly messy but adding a touch of charm. His deep eyes are like an unfathomable pool, as if they can see through my soul, with an irresistible attraction. When our eyes met, time seemed to suddenly stop. The hustle and bustle of the surroundings instantly disappeared, and the whole world was left with just him and me. My heart trembled, and a feeling like no other spread rapidly through my body like electricity. It was a complex emotion of both tension and excitement, fear and anticipation. I could feel my cheeks tingling slightly, and my heart beating faster uncontrollably. I wanted to look away, but his gaze seemed to have a magic that locked me in, unable to escape. He seemed to sense my panic, and his mouth curled up into a charming smile. The smile was like the warm spring sun, warm and friendly, and it made me feel slightly less nervous. He walked towards where I was, with steady and confident steps, as if each step was on my heart. The guests around us seemed to have noticed his presence, and they cast envious and admiring glances. But he didn't care at all, his eyes always fixed firmly on me, as if I were his only goal at this huge ball. When he reached me, he leaned slightly forward and performed a standard gentleman's bow. His elegant posture seemed to have come right out of an ancient aristocratic painting. "Beautiful lady, would you do me the honor of dancing with me?" His voice was low and full of magnetism, like mellow wine, intoxicating to the ear. His tone was soft but full of expectation, and the sincere light shone in his deep eyes. I looked at his outstretched hands, long and strong, with clearly defined joints and clean, neat fingertips. A conflict arose in my heart. On the one hand, I knew that I was married and that dancing with another man seemed inappropriate. On the other hand, his charming demeanor and sincere invitation made it hard for me to refuse. After a brief hesitation, I reached out my hand and placed it lightly in his. His hand was warm and strong, and he held my hand tightly. An electric current instantly spread throughout our bodies from the place where our hands touched. He gently led me to the center of the dance floor, and the people around us made way for us, as if we were the protagonists of this dance party. As the music started, we began to dance. His dance steps were light and smooth, every movement just right, spinning and gliding me across the dance floor. His hand rested lightly on my waist, and the gentle touch made my body tremble slightly. He exuded a unique perfume, a fresh and charming scent that lingered on my nose and intoxicated me. Our eyes met from time to time during the dance, and each time there seemed to be 1,000 words flowing between us. His eyes were full of admiration and love, and I was unconsciously attracted to his charm. We started talking, and his words were humorous and witty, occasionally making me giggle softly. His voice whispered in my ear, with a kind of indistinct ambiguity that made my heart flutter. I tried to remain calm, but my body could not help dancing to his rhythm, and my heart was unconsciously drawing closer and closer. I could feel the envious and jealous stares around me, but I could not care less. At the moment, it seemed as if I had completely immersed myself in the world of dancing with him. However, in the midst of this beautiful atmosphere, I felt a vague sense of unease in my heart. I knew that this feeling was dangerous, and I couldn't let myself get deeper and deeper into it. But every time I tried to wake up, his deep eyes and gentle smile made it impossible for me to resist. As the music played, our dance became more and more in sync, our bodies drawing closer and closer. He gently wrapped his arms around me, and I could feel his strong heartbeat. My face flushed with heat. Just then, the music suddenly stopped, and we slowly stopped dancing. I gasped slightly, looked up at him, and saw that his eyes were full of affection. "Thank you, beautiful lady. It was my great honor to dance with you tonight," he said softly, with a hint of reluctance in his voice. I nodded with a smile, wanting to say something, but my throat felt as if it was blocked, and I couldn't make a sound. Just then, there was loud applause all around, and I realized that our dance had attracted everyone's attention. I lowered my head a little shyly, but also with a little bit of pride. He gently took my hand and led me out of the dance floor to a relatively quiet corner. We sat on an exquisite sofa. He poured a glass of champagne for me and handed it to me. I took the glass and took a gentle sip. The cool liquid flowed down my throat, slightly sobering me up. We began to talk, from music and art to the little things in life. We discovered that we had many common interests and topics. As we talked, I got to know him better and better. He is a successful entrepreneur with a wealth of life experience and unique insights. His words were full of wisdom and charm, which made me even more fascinated by him. But there was always a voice in my heart reminding me that I must not forget my identity. I have a husband. Just as we were having a good chat, I suddenly saw my husband not far away. He was talking to a group of friends, his face beaming with a smile. A wave of guilt washed over me, and I snapped back to reality, realizing that I almost lost my way. I put down my glass, stood up, and said to Jack, "I'm sorry, I think I should go back." Jack seemed a little surprised, and a flash of disappointment crossed his eyes, but he quickly regained his composure. He nodded with a smile and said, "Of course, I hope there will be another chance for us to dance together in the future." I forced a smile and turned towards my husband. On the way to my husband, I tried hard to adjust my emotions and look calm. When I walked up to my husband, he smiled, put his arm around my shoulder, and asked, "Honey, who is that man you were dancing with?" I was taken aback, but calmly replied, "Just an ordinary friend who happened to invite me to dance." My husband nodded and didn't ask any more. But my heart could not calm down. My encounter and dance with Jack just now was like a beautiful but dangerous dream, which made me both intoxicated and scared. I didn't know if I could still resist his temptation, nor did I know where the temptation of this dance party would lead me. The melodious dance music echoed throughout the large dance floor, and the lights shimmered and twinkled like a dream, casting a hazy light and shadow. Jack and I were in the center of the dance floor, dancing lightly to the rhythm of the music. His hand, like a ball of warm flame, gently rested on my waist. The just right strength made my body tremble slightly, and an indescribable feeling quickly spread throughout my body. He exudes a unique perfume, which is fresh and slightly mysterious, as if it were the breath of a distant forest, lingering on the tip of my nose and making me slightly intoxicated. Every time his body approaches, the faint aroma becomes stronger and stronger, surrounding me tightly, making me feel as if I were in a world that belongs only to the two of us. Our steps were light and smooth, like those of a pair of perfectly attuned dance partners. Jack's eyes were locked on mine the whole time, and there seemed to be endless emotions in those deep, deep eyes. His mouth curled up slightly, with a gentle smile, and from time to time he whispered to me, "Alice, you are like a bright star tonight, lighting up the whole ball." His voice was low and full of magnetism, like mellow wine, slowly flowing in my ears. I lowered my head slightly, my cheeks flushed with a hint of red, and a feeling of shyness and joy welled up in my heart. "Jack, you are so good at talking," I responded softly, with a hint of trembling in my voice. "I really mean what I say," he said with a gentle smile and sincere eyes. "Ever since I first saw you, I've been deeply attracted to you." His words carried an indistinct sense of intimacy, sending ripples through my heart. I could feel the stares around me, some envious, some jealous, and some vaguely speculative. But at the moment, it was as if I had completely immersed myself in the world of dancing with Jack, deaf to everything around me. As the music gradually picked up speed, our dance became lighter and more cheerful. Jack's hand moved gently around my waist, and the occasional touch sent shivers through my body. His arm wrapped around me powerfully, and our bodies fit together closely. I could clearly feel his strong heartbeat. "You know, Alice, dancing with you feels as good as being in a dream," Jack's voice whispered in my ear, and his breath gently brushed my cheek, making me feel warm. I looked up and met his gaze again. At that moment, I felt as if I had lost myself. I could see the depth of his eyes, and it was an irresistible temptation. Our conversation continued, from poetry and songs to life ideals, from trivial matters to future aspirations. We discovered that we had a lot in common. He spoke with grace and insight, and every word touched my heart. I never imagined that I would meet someone who understood me so well at this ball. "Alice, have you ever thought that life is like a ball, in which we are constantly looking for someone to dance with?" Jack suddenly said, his eyes revealing a trace of confusion and expectation. "And I am very lucky to have met you at this ball." His voice carried a hint of emotion, as if he were telling a long-buried wish. I listened to his words quietly, and a ripple of emotion arose in my heart. "Jack, I wanted to say something, but the words caught in my throat. I knew that I was someone's wife, and this kind of intimacy and emotion should not exist. But Jack's charm made it difficult for me to extricate myself. The melody of the music gradually became soothing, and Jack gently spun me around once, then slowly stopped dancing. We stood in the middle of the dance floor, our eyes meeting, and everything around us seemed to have come to a standstill. His hand was still resting on my waist, and he showed no intention of letting go. "Alice, I don't want this to end," Jack said softly, his eyes betraying a hint of longing. "I hope that we can have more time to share each other's stories and feel the beauty of life together." His words were full of sincerity and expectation, and they made my heart flutter. I bit my lip slightly, my heart filled with conflict. I wanted to say yes, to continue spending time with him, but my reason kept reminding me that I couldn't. "Jack, I need time to think about it," I said softly, a hint of helplessness in my voice. Jack paused slightly, a flash of disappointment in his eyes, but he quickly regained his composure. "Of course, Alice, I understand how you feel," he said with a smile. "I will wait for your answer." He gently released his hand from my waist and then extended his hand in a gentlemanly manner, inviting me to leave the dance floor. We slowly walked off the dance floor and came to a quiet corner. Jack pulled a chair for me to sit down and then poured me a glass of champagne. "I hope this glass of champagne can make you feel a little more relaxed," he said with a smile, his eyes still full of tenderness. I took the glass of champagne and took a gentle sip. The cool liquid flowed down my throat, slightly sobering me up. I looked at the glass of champagne in my hand, my mind filled with thoughts. I didn't know how I should face Jack's feelings, nor did I know how to face my own internal struggles. Just then, I saw my husband not far away, talking to some guests. His smile was still so warm and familiar. A wave of guilt suddenly washed over me, and I snapped back to reality, realizing that I had almost lost my way. I put down the champagne glass in my hand and stood up. "Jack, I think I should go back," I said softly, with a hint of determination in my eyes. Jack was slightly taken aback, and a flash of disappointment appeared in his eyes, but he still nodded with a smile. "Okay, Alice, I hope you can make a choice that will make you happy," he said softly. I turned and walked towards my husband, but my heart was still restless. This flirtatious time with Jack on the dance floor was like a beautiful but dangerous dream, intoxicating and frightening. I didn't know where the temptations of this ball would lead me, but I knew that I had to make a choice soon, otherwise I would be plunged into even deeper pain and struggle. Since dancing with Jack at that ball, my life seems to have returned to normal. Every morning, I carefully prepare breakfast for my husband, watch him eat, and then go off to work, and then I start taking care of the household chores. In the afternoon, I drink tea and read books in the garden, waiting for my husband to return. However, beneath the surface of calm, my heart is already in turmoil, confused by the unexpected emotions that have arisen. Jack's figure always involuntarily pops into my head. His tall and straight figure, his handsome appearance when wearing a sharp suit, his deep eyes, as if they could see everything in my heart, and his low and magnetic voice, the tenderness when whispering in my ear. Every detail about him is like a soft feather, occasionally tickling the strings of my heart. Sometimes I was pruning the branches in the garden, but Jack's smile on the dance floor suddenly popped into my head, and I unconsciously stopped cutting with the scissors in my hand, my eyes becoming lost in thought. Or when I was preparing dinner, the food in the pan was about to burn, but I was oblivious, my thoughts already drifting to the topics of conversation with Jack, his insights and his humor, which fascinated me deeply. As time passed, this longing for Jack grew stronger and stronger. I began to look forward to meeting him again, to hearing his voice, to the moment when our eyes met. This longing, like the young shoots breaking through the soil in spring, grew wildly and uncontrollably. But every time I became aware of these feelings, a flood of guilt would wash over me. I have a husband, and he has always been good to me. He works hard to provide a good life for our family, respects me, loves me, and I have always felt safe by his side. How could I feel this way about another man? These thoughts made me feel miserable, as if I were betraying my husband and our marriage. One evening, I was sitting alone on the sofa in the living room, looking out the window at the darkening sky. My inner conflict intensified. Then the phone rang. My heart lurched, and an inexplicable feeling of foreboding washed over me. I picked up the phone, trembling, and when I saw the name on the caller ID, Jack, my hands actually felt a little unsteady. After a moment of hesitation, I pressed the answer button. "Alice, how are you?" Jack's voice came over the phone, with a hint of concern and tenderness. Hearing his voice, my heart suddenly began to beat faster, and I was unable to speak for a moment. "Alice?" Jack called out softly when he didn't hear a response. I'm fine." I finally found my voice again, trying to sound as calm as possible. "That's good. I was just a little worried about you," Jack said. "Ever since the last dance, I've been thinking about you. I don't know if you feel the same way." His words were straightforward and passionate, and they made my face flush instantly. "Jack, we can't do this," I tried to keep my head. "I have a husband. We shouldn't have these feelings for each other." My voice trembled a little, and even I could hear the weakness in it. Alice, I know your concerns, and I don't want to cause you any trouble. Jack's voice carried a hint of helplessness. But when it comes to feelings, sometimes it's really out of our control. I just hope that you can give me a chance to get to know you better. After hanging up the phone, I slumped down on the sofa, my heart filled with mixed emotions. Jack's words had confused my already wavering heart even more. I began to recall the bits and pieces of my life with my husband, the good times we had spent together, our wedding, our trips, every warm moment in our lives. These memories made me feel even more guilty, but Jack's figure still lingered in my mind. In the following days, I tried to keep myself busy, trying to distract myself with work and housework. I took on more household chores, cleaned the house to a shine, and started learning new cooking techniques to prepare sumptuous dinners for my husband. However, these efforts did not seem to have much effect. Whenever I was lying in bed late at night, the image of Jack would appear in my mind, the images of dancing with him, the words of conversation, constantly playing back in my mind. Once, my husband and I went to a friend's party together. At the party, I saw a couple being very close to each other, but I couldn't help thinking about Jack, about the intimate contact when he danced with me, and about his gentleness. My face turned pale, and my husband noticed my change and asked with concern, "Alice, what's wrong? Are you not feeling well?" I forced a smile and said, "I'm fine, I'm just a little tired." This emotional struggle plunged me into deep pain. I could neither let go of my feelings for Jack nor face my own husband. I didn't know what to do, and every day I was tormented by this conflict and pain. I began to doubt myself, my feelings, and my moral bottom line. I knew that I had to make a decision soon, otherwise I would go further and further down this wrong path, hurting more and more people. As the days passed, I could never find peace in my heart. Sometimes I firmly told myself to stick to my marriage, but at other times I wavered under Jack's gentle persuasion. This state of constant flux exhausted me. Jack didn't seem to have given up either. Occasionally, he would send me messages, asking about my life and sharing his daily life with me. Every time I received a message from him, my heart would flutter, but then I would be overwhelmed with guilt and self-blame. I know I can't go on like this. I must face my heart and make the right choice. But this choice is really hard for me. How should I decide on the emotional and moral scales? I don't know what the future holds, but I know I can't go on struggling like this. Since that phone call with Jack, his passion has grown even more intense, like a raging tide that has completely overwhelmed me. He frequently sends me messages, full of thoughts and concerns for me, and from time to time asks me to meet up. At first, I always refused with various excuses, but his persistence gradually made me waver a little. Finally, one day, after his repeated sincere invitations, I, for some reason, agreed to meet him in a quiet cafe. The moment I walked into the cafe, I saw Jack sitting in the corner. He was wearing a casual gray sweater and dark jeans, looking warm and handsome. When he saw me, he immediately got up, his face beaming with a big smile, and walked quickly towards me. "Alice, you're here," he said, his voice tinged with surprise and excitement. He reached out and gently took my hand in his, and the familiar touch made my heart beat faster again. We sat down at a table and ordered 2 coffees. In the soft light, we began to talk. His words were still so gentle and beautiful, and we talked about our lives and our dreams. As the conversation deepened, I found myself becoming more and more immersed in the time I spent with him, almost forgetting my identity and responsibilities. Jack's eyes never left mine, and his burning gaze seemed to melt me. He slowly reached out and gently took my hand. I tried to pull it back, but I didn't have enough strength. "Alice, I know this is difficult for you, but I really can't control my feelings." Jack's voice was low and deep. "I have never met someone like you who makes my heart flutter, and since the moment I met you, my heart has never been able to calm down." His words were like heavy hammers, pounding on my heart. I looked at him, my heart filled with conflict and struggle. On the one hand, I was moved by his sincerity and passion, and deep down I had an uncontrollable fondness for him. On the other hand, I thought of my husband, the man who had always been by my side, giving me love and warmth. I could not betray him. I could not betray our marriage. Jack, we can't do this. I tried to keep my voice calm. I have a family. My husband is very good to me. I can't do anything to betray him. My words carried a hint of determination, but my eyes betrayed my inner hesitation. Jack frowned slightly, a flash of disappointment in his eyes, but he didn't give up. Alice, I know you have concerns, but love cannot be bound, he said, taking my hand firmly. We can take our time. I'm willing to wait for you until you truly face your own heart. Since then, Jack has continued to ask me out frequently, and our relationship has become increasingly ambiguous. Although every time we meet I tell myself in my heart that it will be the last time, the next time he asks, I still can't say no. We go for walks, watch movies, and enjoy delicious food together, and each time we spend time together, I fall deeper and deeper in love. One time, Jack asked me to a private party. When I arrived at the party venue, I found it was a luxurious villa with bright lights and melodious music. Jack was dressed in a formal suit and was standing at the door to greet me. When he saw me, his eyes lit up and he immediately came up to me, took my hand, and led me into the villa. At the party, Jack kept close to my side, introducing me to his friends. His friends were all very warm towards me, praising me for being beautiful and charming. My consciousness gradually became a little hazy under the influence of alcohol, and my mental defenses were gradually disintegrating. To the rhythm of the music, Jack led me onto the dance floor. His hand was wrapped tightly around my waist, our bodies pressed close together, and I could feel his breath and heartbeat. His eyes were full of desire and affection, and he slowly moved closer to me. Just as his lips were about to touch mine, the figure of my husband suddenly appeared in my mind. I saw my husband's gentle smile, the birthday surprise he had prepared for me, and all the wonderful times we had spent together. My heart suddenly pounded, and I came to my senses. I realized that I had almost made an irreversible mistake. I could not betray my husband. I could not betray our family. No, Jack, we can't do this. I pushed him away forcefully, my eyes filled with tears. Alice, what's wrong? Jack looked at me with surprise and confusion. I can't betray my husband. I can't do it, I said chokingly. Let's end it here. Don't contact each other in the future. After saying that, I turned around and ran out of the villa, leaving Jack standing alone on the dance floor. The night wind outside blew on my face, making me feel a burst of clarity. I looked up at the night sky, my heart full of guilt and self-blame. I knew that I had just walked back from the brink of cheating, and I could no longer let myself get into such danger. Back home, I saw my husband sitting on the sofa watching TV. He saw me, smiled, got up, came over and hugged me. You're back. Did you have a good time? His voice was full of care. I hugged him tightly, and tears welled up in my eyes. What's wrong, honey? My husband asked a little worriedly. Nothing. I just miss you so much, I said chokingly. At that moment, I decided to completely let go of this relationship with Jack and return to my own family. I knew that only by cherishing the people in front of me could I have true happiness. Although Jack's temptation almost made me lose my way, I finally regained my senses and made the right choice. However, this experience left me with lingering fears. I don't know if I will encounter similar temptations in the future, but I swear that I will stick to my principles and protect my marriage and family. I pushed Jack away and turned to flee from that corner full of temptation and danger. The sound of my high heels on the floor echoed in the empty corridor, and my heart beat like a drum, as if a ferocious beast was chasing me. The cool night breeze blew in my face, instantly cooling my cheeks, which had been burning with tension and excitement. I hurried through the ballroom, surrounded by the stares of the guests, who looked at me with surprise and curiosity. But at this time, I had no time to care. I just wanted to escape from this place that almost made me lose myself. Outside the hall, I stood on the roadside, looking at the busy street. My heart was full of mixed emotions. With trembling hands, I took out my phone and called a taxi. Sitting in the back seat, I held my phone tightly and looked out the window with vacant eyes. The lights of the city twinkled, but my heart was dark. I kept thinking about the scene just now, Jack's loss and confusion in his eyes, and a trace of unspeakable reluctance in the depths of my heart. But the thought of my husband's face strengthened my resolve. When I returned home, the house was quiet. I opened the door gently, afraid of waking my sleeping husband. There was a faint, warm and soft light in the living room. I took off my high heels and tiptoed into the bedroom. In the dim light, I saw my husband lying quietly on the bed, his face peaceful, with what seemed to be a smile on the corner of his mouth. My heart ached, and a wave of guilt washed over me. I sat down by the bed and looked at him quietly. His hair was a little messy, and there was a hint of weariness on his face, the signs of working hard for our family day and night. I thought of all the little things we had done together, the sweet memories, the days when we supported each other. How could I have almost ruined all of this because of a moment of impulse? Tears welled up in my eyes, and I gently covered my mouth with my hand, afraid that my crying would wake him up. I silently vowed in my heart that I would bury this dangerous experience completely and never let it affect our lives again. In the days that followed, I tried my best to get my life back on track. I took better care of my husband, getting up early every morning to prepare a nutritious breakfast for him and cooking his favorite dishes in the evenings. I also took the initiative to accompany him to various social activities and played the role of a gentle and considerate wife by his side. However, it is not easy to completely forget Jack. Whenever it gets quiet late at night, the images of my time with him will inevitably come back to me. His smile, his eyes, his voice, they all linger on like ghosts. But I know that I can't dwell on the past anymore, I have to move on. One day, while shopping, I happened to see a cafe. It was a place Jack and I had been to before, and my feet couldn't help but stop. Looking at the familiar sign, my heart tightened again. I took a deep breath and was about to turn away when I heard a familiar voice. "Alice?" I turned around and saw Jack standing not far away, with a hint of surprise and joy on his face. My body instantly froze and my heartbeat quickened. "Jack, I didn't expect to see you here." I tried to make my voice sound calm. Jack walked up to me, with a hint of expectation in his eyes. "Alice, I've been looking for you. I want to talk to you," he said with a hint of urgency in his voice. I hesitated for a moment, but finally nodded. We walked into the cafe and sat in the same seat we had sat in before. "Alice, I know my previous behavior has caused you trouble, and I'm sorry," Jack said sincerely. "But my feelings for you are real, and I can't give them up easily." I looked at him, my heart full of emotions. "Jack, I appreciate your feelings for me, but I already have a family, and I can't betray my husband," I said firmly. Jack was silent for a while, then let out a soft sigh. "I understand, Alice. I respect your choice. I just hope you can be happy." There was a hint of sadness in his eyes, but more of an understanding. We talked for a while, reminiscing about some of the good times we had had, but we both knew that was all in the past. Since then, I have never met Jack again. I know that our story has come to an end. I have devoted all my energy to my family, and my relationship with my husband has become closer and closer. We travel together, go to friends' parties together, and enjoy an ordinary but happy life. Although the temptation of this dance party made me experience pain and struggle, it also made me understand the importance of family even more. It has become a secret in my heart forever, reminding me to cherish the happiness in front of me and not be swayed by external temptations. Now, whenever I think back on that experience, I no longer feel the same anguish and pain I felt at the time. I have learned to grow, to persevere, and to remain vigilant in the face of temptation. I believe that in the future, no matter what difficulties or temptations I encounter, I will be able to firmly protect my family and this hard-won happiness.